Hi friends, welcome to Best Practices Weekly, the primary edition. This week we will look at an article called Can We Really Count on Frank? And learn best practices for how to evaluate the mathematical content in picture books and ways we can best use those in our classroom. Can We Really Count on Frank comes from the March 2013 edition of Teaching Children Mathematics. In this edition, we will look at what best practices we can glean from this article for our primary classrooms. We'll look at how we could use the framework to evaluate our picture books for mathematical content, and we will make some Common Core connections. In this article, the authors introduce a framework which primary teachers can use to evaluate the mathematical content in picture books. The framework was actually written by one of the authors, Martzen, in 2010, and it can help classroom teachers use criteria to evaluate picture books because we would never want to impose math on a book that it didn't naturally fit in, but we also don't want to miss mathematical opportunities in books where it's a natural fit. The framework lays out three different kinds of mathematical picture books, one with perceived content, one with explicit content, and some with embedded content. And today we'll look at an example of perceived, explicit, and embedded picture books. The framework also lays out 7 different classifications that kind of get into technical jargon, but basically that we might see picture books that are strong in math content. We might see picture books that are strong in making meaning or problem solving or reasoning. But we also learned through the article that a picture book doesn't have to be strong in every classification in order to be great use during a math lesson or a great way to integrate math into a read aloud. The first picture book we'll look at today is called Half a World Away, and it is written by Gleason, published in 2007. And it's about 2 best friends, Amy and Louie, who live next door to each other. They do everything together until one of the girls moves half the world away. So this book was evaluated to have perceived content. That means it wasn't necessarily written for math lessons. It was written to entertain, but there are lots of opportunities to develop math concepts throughout the book, including things like length, if you ask questions like how far is too far away, time, why is Amy awake when Louie is sleeping. And this book also presented opportunities for cross-curricular connections like global geography, communication, and interpersonal relationships. So those are things to look for when you're looking at a text that might have perceived content. I happen to think as primary teachers we do a great job looking for perceived content in picture books. One thing we might be careful about is trying to force a mathematical concept into a picture book that doesn't naturally fit there. Just something to keep in mind as we plan our read alouds and look for books that might have perceived content. The next picture book we'll look at is called 1 is a Snail, 10 is a Crab. It was written in 2003 by Sayer and Sayer, and it is a counting feet book. A snail has 1 foot, a person has 2, a crab has 10, all the way up to 100. So this book was evaluated to have explicit mathematical content. That simply means that it was written for the purpose of teaching math concepts. So a close examination of this book shows us that the words, the title, and the pictures in this book can all work together to help students create mathematical meaning. A lot of times books with explicit content can help our students engage in problem-solving activities, maybe math journal activities that stem from explicit content picture books. Also, we learned through this article that the visual images that are in explicit content books really can help kids connect complex math to the engaging context that is the actual story within the book. I think a lot of my primary teacher friends would agree that there are many more explicit content books out there for us to help our students engage in math lessons, to show them through visuals what complex mathematical concepts might look like, to help put math into a fun story for them to engage with. So that's kind of an exciting thing for primary teachers right now, is the integration of literacy and math concepts together. And finally, we come to our story called Counting on Frank. Counting on Frank was written by Clements in 1990, and it is a very popular picture book among elementary school children, telling the story of a young boy and his dog, Frank. And the text might go something like this: I don't mind having a bath, it gives me time to think. For example, I calculate it would take 11 hours and 45 minutes to fill the entire bathroom with water. That's with both taps running. It would take less time to empty as long as no one opened the door. So Counting on Frank is a fun story, and it was evaluated to have embedded content. That means it could be read for the story alone, but there are math concepts that are purposefully added throughout the text and throughout the pictures in the book. So the authors of the article actually used this book as an example of sometimes embedded content into picture books that are not accurate. For example, lots of people use this for problem solving and reasoning, but the authors of the article warn us to take a close look at text like that because many of the situations throughout the book are not accurate and they're not authentic situations for problem solving in real life. And we know that those are shifts that we're making in our math instruction. We're checking for accuracy, we're checking for precision, and we're looking for real-world problem solving. So while books like this are still fun to read in the classroom, maybe that's something that we do as we're reading is draw attention to, do you think that could really happen? How could we measure that to see if that was precise and accurate? As we look at our classroom libraries or we're shopping for books to use for mathematics lessons, we want to look for books that have math visible through the title, through the content in the book, and through the pictures. We want to look for books that show that math is accurate and precise. Math is authentically woven throughout the text and throughout daily life. And even for mathematical language and vocabulary words to be used in the book accurately. We want to bring things that are inaccuracies to the attention of our students and even talk about ways that we could test the statements in the book to see if they were true or not, just to have them thinking reasonably about math. Taking this back to our primary classrooms, we can now evaluate our picture books to see if there is perceived explicit or embedded math content. Let's remember to make math fit into books when it's natural and not try to force a math lesson into a text where it doesn't fit, because we all know our students will pick up on that really quickly. I think it would be neat for grade level teams to work together to identify and evaluate some picture books for mathematical content and maybe create some kind of a math library of books with lessons, problem solving ideas that could come from the books, math journal extensions, and really kind of share the load, but working together to incorporate literacy into math content. So how does evaluating picture books for mathematical content connect to Common Core? Well, anytime we're integrating a content area with literacy skills, we're meeting one of those all-important shifts that the Common Core calls us to make. But more importantly, we can also very easily incorporate some of the 8 mathematical practices through read-alouds and connecting with the story. For example, we can watch how characters make sense of problems in stories and persevere in solving them. We can watch how characters reason about math, and we can practice those reasoning skills. We can critique the arguments of characters in a book solving a math problem, and then we can practice doing that with our friends and in our math journals. We can watch and look at the pictures in picture books about how they model and use math tools. We can evaluate whether they're attending to precision, and then we can practice attending to precision. So there are all kinds of ways to talk about these 8 mathematical practices during a read aloud where math content is naturally woven throughout the text. I hope you've gotten some practical applications for how to take this framework back to your classroom and look at your library and your picture books and see how you might be able to naturally incorporate some mathematical concepts through your read-alouds. If you find a book that you think has embedded content or explicit content, please feel free to come back and share with us on our website or on our Facebook page so that we can learn from each other how to use these best practices in our primary classrooms. Thanks for watching.